Hello, everybody. So it's been a while since I've done an instructional video or an interpretation video. And the reason that I'm doing this is because the last time at my bi-weekly class or group or whatever you want to call it that I host on the tarot, there was a little confusion about the chariot. So I'm going to make this video as kind of like a I don't know, a prequel to the class and just anybody on YouTube. So we're going to be working with Strength card today. And what I want to bring to our attention is the relationship between the woman and the lion initially. And what we have here is they're bound together. You can't really see it because this artist um, didn't really depict the wreath of roses going down the lion's neck very well because of the coloring, but it's there. And what I want you to think about with this is how we're bound to nature. So the human mind is bound, or the human body is bound to nature, and it kind of houses the mind. So we have this wreath of roses, which kind of represents the intertwined forces of nature. And then we should know that the roses kind of represent desires. And everything in nature has a desire to will itself into existence or to sustain itself. And we have our own personal desires. What we also have here is a juxtaposition between a maiden and a lion. So again, we're dealing with the forces of duality. But ultimately, what I want to bring to our attention, which is pretty apparent, is the sign of infinity, which represents forces that are eternal. Now, eternal means something that's outside of time. And I'm going to do I'm going to show you some cards. I'm only going to make this like a 10-minute video. And I'm going to show you some cards in a succession that will make more sense about what's going on with this card. Couple last points before we continue. The maiden is opening the mouth of the lion. You can't really see it in this card. Some people are like, well, it's being closed, but no, it's actually being open. So the lion represents perfected nature, or nature in its most pure form. Um, so why would we be opening the mouth of nature in its most perfected form? Well, so that we can perfect ourselves. So a lot of times we're faced with fears and we're faced with things that we're not afraid of. In the card, the lion represents our fears, and the maiden represents the things that we're not afraid of. So as we go through life, we're faced with challenges and things that we're afraid of. And if we open the mouth of our fears and peer into them, we're able to better conquer the nature of those fears. All right. So I'm going to move on to the next card. This is the Paul Foster Case deck, BOTA deck. And here you can really see that the maiden is opening the mouth of the lion, and that the wreath of roses is truly bound to her waist. So there are forces inside of nature that we're bound to. And we have a relationship with nature that we just can't get away from. Now, if you notice, the hands are around the mouth. Now, we can connect with nature through our hands by making things, and we can also connect with others through speaking. So we have a force that we can connect with through nature and through speaking. Now, the the intelligence or the consciousness that's attached to this is the secret of spiritual activity. So inside of nature, I said that there are forces. Now, this card kind of sums up all of the forces almost in one, but not really. It represents our own personal conquering or even just recognition of these forces and being able to work with them. So these are the forces of will, these are the forces of structure, these are the forces of organization, these are the forces of the mind. Okay, so this is really our relationship to nature and these spiritual forces and the secrets that are kind of embedded in them. And these come from an eternal reality, a reality that is beyond time. I wouldn't even say it's a reality. I would just say it's spiritual force beyond time. And then once you kind of realize that our physical world is an expression of this super conscious thing that is outside of time, then we can move forward. Now, I also want you to recognize how the lion is positioned in front of the maiden. And if the maiden kind of represents, let's say, in quote, us or humanity, then it is these spiritual forces embedded inside of nature that guide our basically guide our thinking patterns. Now, in philosophy, it's said that you can't have a conclusion without an observation or multiple observations. And if you look at the maiden, she's looking at the lion. She's keenly observing the lion. We could even see it in the Rider-Waite card. And the lion is in front of the maiden. So that represents that these spiritual forces that are embedded in nature are before man, okay? And they can speak to us, right? We're working with the mouth, so we're working with like speaking. And they can also build things for us, so we have the hand. So we're going to move on. And as we go through these cards, it'll start to make some more sense. So here we have the Gareth Knight Tarot. And here we have a green lion, which represents the unperfected forces of nature. So they're imperfect. The red lion represents the perfected. Now, every deck is going to give you different meaning. And here it says that our purified nature is represented by the maiden, can actually help perfect nature. And if you know the Hebrew letters, we have almost like a gimel or a kaf shape to the tail. Now, as I said, that this card represents forces of nature that man can conquer to better himself. And all these forces that we see inside of nature are spiritual. They originate in spiritual power. Whether you're a monist and believe that this power is only itself and nature is all that ever was, or you are a person that believes that there was something before nature, it doesn't matter. These forces are still inside of nature. And originally, in tarot history, this card was called Force. So again, we have the means of binding with nature and using this embedded spiritual force to help better ourselves. This is a Marseille pattern deck, and what I'm about to show you now is from my own personal collection. This card is from 1890, and it is from the Schaffenhaus Tarot. It is a wood block print, and again, even over 100 years ago, well, this previous card is a facsimile, but I believe it was slightly older, but this is a real card from the 1800s. And again, we have the person opening the mouth of the lion, and it's pretty clear here, even back then, that the mouth was being opened. In this one, it's the blue lion, which I'm not sure exactly what that means, but still very cool nonetheless. This is a wood block print, and you can see the stamping on the card. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the Manly P. Hall deck. And traditionally, or sometimes, the strength card was placed at number 11. I'm pretty sure that's pretty consistent throughout history. It was only recently, the past 100 years, that it changed to 8, and I'll tell you why another day. But again, we have the lemniscate, or the infinity sign. But what is interesting here is that there's bones scattered around the lion, so this could represent kind of the dissolution of nature and then the creation of nature. So sometimes the maiden is thought of as the empress, or the creative power, or the imaginative power that brings things to life. And the lion is sometimes thought of as the tower, or the aspect of nature that breaks things apart. So bones, it's a lot of carbon, and carbon is kind of the basis of reality. So carbon is bonded together and then dissolved. And it also suggests the powers of digestion, which are associated with this card. So we have to digest nature to thoroughly understand it in its purest form. We have to take it in little bits and break it down. So here we have the Picard Tarot, and we have a lot of the same symbolism. Again, La Force. Now we're going to start to get into more of the esoteric tarots. This is the Crowley deck. And what I really want you to see here is that the maiden is riding the lion, or the force of nature, but she's drawing down something that is above them. She's drawing down the forces that are beyond this reality. This horizon here you can think of as the reality that is beyond, or spiritual reality that is beyond nature. And the tunnel here is that infinitude, that beyondness, and we can draw down this force depicted by the it almost looks like a cell, or a planet, or a planetary wheel, and bring it into nature. There's a lot more symbolism in this card, but that's just what I wanted to show initially. And ultimately, we're going to look at Tarot of the Sephiroth. And here we have another depiction of some higher spiritual power, being, something influencing nature. Okay, so that's just some basics of this card. It essentially has to do with man's relationship to the forces of nature, which are ultimately spiritual force, and his powers to, or not even powers, the recognition to better yourself, failures and successes, and move forward. And that has to do with severity, protecting, mercy, structure, will, mind, neutrality, all these things. All right, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for watching.